Trying to eat some firewood.
Super. We're live now on Voice of Crypto's YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mehow, Michael. It's a pleasure to have you on Voice of Crypto's show, and this is a weekly thing that we do. Our weekly episodes of Voices of Web3 is where we get some of the top guests from the Web3, crypto, and blockchain space. Leaders, pioneers in this space. And today it's our pleasure to have you here. Thank you everyone for joining. As you all are aware that we get some of the top guests from the Web3 space. And today it's our pleasure to host Mehow on our show. And he is the CEO and founder of MatterFi. More on his journey and MatterFi from his own mouth. Thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to know more about you.
Okay. Hey, Varuni. Yeah. So you can just call me Michal. It's Michal is Michael in Polish. So we'll get confused about the name because it's Michal, right? And it sounds like Michael, but it's actually pronounced Michal. So
yeah. Okay.
That's why I just spelled Mehow, even though like the real spelling is Michal. Yeah. So what would you like to know?
Tell us all about your journey in the Web3 space. I'm sure that this is not how you started your career. What did your career path look like? How did you pivot to Web3? How did MatterFi come into existence? A little bit about your role at MatterFi and your team. I think that's too many questions on your plate in one go. But we'll start with your journey.
Okay, sounds good. So I've been a hacker since I was 15. So, my main focus was to try to, break into stuff and make it better. I've always been a white hat hacker. I worked inside the Beltway for a while. The U.S. Navy was a client. I was in a open source intelligence startup. I made a big intelligence engine for the U.S. Navy. And then I sort of went into business by myself. And then 5 years ago, I got with my co-founders who were already working on this project, which was Chris Odom and Justice Ranveer. So Justice invented BIP47, which is pay codes for Bitcoin. And then Chris Odom invented open transactions. And then I wrote 9 patents here focused around the hardware security around our software. And ultimately what we built is a wallet and custody infrastructure that allows for instant off-chain transfers of crypto or fiat with cryptographic proofs. At the same time, for on-chain, everything's done with names, right? So like you can just send to Mehow, for example, instead of using a receive address, but the system actually is using receive addresses. Just everything is computed in the background automatically. And then we've got full KYC AML built into that. That's decentralized. There is no token powering this, right? It just works. So it's kind of like PayPal for all of crypto. And we even built our own, hardware wallet to go with that, which I can actually show you here. Hold on one second. I'm in my empty house here because it's like the mover. I'm in the middle of a move, and there is the furniture is supposed to get here either later today or tomorrow. And right now I'm in a camping chair. So hence the, cool blue ergonomics. But
you and your dog.
So this is our hardware wallet. So this is for one of our customers called Space Dogs. That is a custom hardware wallet. It's patented. It's made by Samsung, Tangem, and us. Right, it's got our firmware on it, so it supports all the send to name functionality. Right, so what we wanted to do is make Web3 like super easy to use, and so it's just like PayPal, right? And we wanted that to work seamlessly everywhere, right? So it's like the same infrastructure you use for the off-chain transactions as the on-chain. And what got me really into it is when I was working in software security, I my mentor was actually a guy named Gary McGraw, who was my boss essentially at Cigital, right, in the early 2000s. And that company kind of pioneered software security. Like we were some of the first people to do a lot of software security work. And in that time, my job was to basically go around and to analyze source code and, figure out how to, an attacker would get in. And ultimately, what I kind of concluded being there is that you could break anything, especially if it didn't have software security engineered in. And I had this sort of maybe borderline at the time delusional idea that somehow we could fix it all, right? Like we could make software super secure, right? And then my friend and co-founder Chris Odom actually came up with the answer, which was that you make everything a cryptographic proof. And that's what got me excited and back into the Web3 and crypto space, and it's not really like crypto, right? Like you can actually use our system without crypto at all, like no Bitcoin or whatever. You can use it just for software security. But the central idea is that every operation inside the system, there is no automatic trust. It's not like you log in, right? And then your client can do whatever it wants, really. So if it makes a particular API call to the server will just do it because you logged in. Right. In our case, it's different. Every time you do an operation, you have to provide a cryptographic proof, whether that's on chain or off chain. So like the simple example is in Bitcoin, every time I spend, right, or I transfer funds, I have to, whip out my hardware wallet or, enter my PIN and sign a transaction with a private key. And now the miners, they're not like, calling me up saying, hey, is this really you? Where's the CAPTCHA, phone verification, 2FA? None of that's happening, right? The miner just knows this is a valid transaction. Yeah. So you don't need to ask any more questions. You're 100% sure from the miner's point of view, it's a valid transaction. Like the only way the security principle could be broken is if somebody stole that user's private key, which in the world of hacks, that's the last thing that ever happens, right? It's like actual private key theft is not a very common occurrence. The hacks all happen in bridges. They happen in the middleware. They happen in the interface between, the client and the user, right? In the interface between the user and like wherever the crypto is being stored centrally. So a perfect example of that would be anything like, most exchanges which use usernames and passwords, right? So when you sign up for a username and password, where you sign up for an exchange account, you go through some KYC, they take your ID, and then they think, okay, this is probably the guy, right? But then they say, all right, now deposit some crypto. Here is our receive address, right? And now they pray that that's really your crypto, right? And then withdrawal, the same thing happens, which is a really common security problem. Is that when they're withdrawing, everybody's praying that it's really you withdrawing. Right, like that's the number one theft ever, right? It's like the number one Coinbase hack is somebody gets stolen, the password gets reset, and then there's a withdrawal to some address that's not actually the user, right? So in our system, none of that exists. That infrastructure is just gone because a withdrawal is done with a cryptographic proof, just like a spend is on Bitcoin, right? So when a user signs that off-chain instrument for a withdrawal, the server knows automatically that they're definitely sending the money right back to the private key that signed the withdrawal request. And that's mathematically guaranteed. So there's no way to fool it, actually. So that entire class of attacks is now completely impossible. So that's what got me, really excited about doing this. It's because it creates a new paradigm that actually not only solves a lot of usability problems in cryptocurrency, but also solves a lot of problems in software security itself.
Understood. So how old is MatterFi? And talking about your competitors in this space, are there other companies that are offering similar, if not the exact same solution? How is competition looking like? And from then to now, how have you guys scaled up?
So, we're still, I'd say we are a late stage startup. We're about 4 years old. And then the tech was previously worked on at a place called Rune Wallet and another place called Stash Crypto. And MatterFi acquired both of those companies to, basically upon its inception, right? So we've got the entire original technical team, almost all of it. All of us are still together. And we raised some money a couple of years ago, late 2021. We raised 1.65 million, and basically we got $1 million of revenue. And then now we have 3 products in beta, which is Space Dogs, Swiss Fortress, swissfortress.com, and also the Ceres wallet, which is a Casper wallet that'll be released here shortly. It's not out it's kind of like done internal beta, but it hasn't been released publicly yet. So our journey, I would say, as a company has been we haven't really been worried about competition because like we're actually very different from everybody else. First of all, as far as I know, no one's got the off-chain crypto engine, right? So like no one's got secure send to name. So as an example, we are essentially Trezor, Ledger, Fireblocks, Metaco, Phoenix Systems, Unstoppable Domains, and ENS and Telegram all rolled into one. So we have one app that does all those things. People say, well, is that too big? Like, why did it take so long? Well, that's a lot of software, right? But we've actually have it so that everything works together. So for example, the crypto infrastructure that we use to do this sort of address magic where unique addresses are generated between wallets automatically, and no one knows like how much money you received. So like if I post my name Mehow in my wallet publicly on Instagram and just say, use any of the wallets I just mentioned, send me any crypto, my wallet will automatically receive that crypto. But unlike Unstoppable Domains or ENS, you can't look up how much money I received, right? It's on chain, but it's on addresses that only my wallet and the sender's wallets know, right? So only we can compute those secrets. Third-party observers can't look it up and just say, Unstoppable Domains, here is how much money this person received. So like so for example, in friend.tech, there was that hack I guess it was about 6 weeks ago, where 100,000 users' Twitter IDs and their Ethereum addresses were exposed. So obviously what they were trying to do is make it so like, yeah, you can just send to a Twitter ID, right? But the only way they knew how to do it was, okay, we're going to have everybody sign up on our platform and just give us their Ethereum receive address. So that poses a number of problems because now you have a central database that you can just query. You don't even have to break it. So that wasn't really a hack. It was basically API abuse, if you call it that, or API use. You can query the API and just get a list of everybody's receive addresses, and then you just look it up on chain, right? Now you know all the money that everybody's received. And that's true for Unstoppable Domains. It's true for ENS. And it's been true for all of these things. So the point I'm trying to get is like every problem we solve in a unique way. And then all the problems we solve together, certainly no one solved, right? So it's like, I always hear of project, did you hear about this project or that project? And, when I look at it, I'll see, it does like one of the 10 things that we do, but because it's only solving that one problem, it's not solving the whole problem, which is actually when you put it together, it's pretty profound, right? So in our case, we have the world's only private send to name with a hardware wallet that supports that, right? So Unstoppable and Ledger at the same time, right? And then we've got a custody system where you can do instant transfers of crypto privately with cryptographic proofs. And now we have institutional clients that are currently onboarding that technology. And I can't say who they are yet because there is some big press coming out about that soon, but it's well known, certainly, I'd say, well known in the fintech space and extremely well known in the crypto space is our clients. And what's really cool there is now our wallet, which, the send to name with the full KYC on it, right? And the automated withdrawals with the full KYC lets you create a ecosystem where there is no DeFi here. Like you don't have to keep feeding there's no MatterFi token. Like you don't have to keep it just works like regular software, right? So from a bank point of view, this is extremely attractive because now you can have Fedwire for all of crypto, where people deposit funds with their off-chain with our wallet, right, which is both on and off-chain. So say you're Binance and you're trying to move a bunch of money around, and you don't necessarily want people to know how much money you're moving because right now every time it's unusual in the crypto space, you have this idea that everybody's watching like everybody's wallet, right? So with a whale watchers and this wallet moved this stuff, and it's weird because in traditional fintech that doesn't exist, right? If somebody sends like a Fed wire, Fed knows, but no one else does, right? So it makes regular kind of business transactions kind of odd, right? Because you may be doing something really good in the world, but if people know that you're moving this money, they may assume that something bad is happening, right? Or they may assume something good is happening. It just kind of screws up the deal, right? People obviously want confidentiality, right? In money, period, right? So, the thing we've developed is a thing where you can, take your off-chain wallet, you deposit money directly in the crypto into the custody system. Now, the custody system isn't like Fireblocks. It's not HSM that's controlled by a policy engine, whatever the policy engine tells it to do, that the HSM just does and signs some transactions, because that's actually a huge security problem. Because it means that it doesn't matter how strong the HSM is, it can be amazing, right, and unbreakable. But if it just listens to this external piece of software to tell it what to do, then whoever controls the external software can control the money, right? In our case, the HSM is intelligent, meaning that it's looking for the cryptographic proof from that end user wallet. So say you're an institutional fintech, and now you want to bank with somebody, right, that is offering these off-chain services, right? And, I can't say when this will be available. It's all kind of, hush hush for now, but it's 100% coming, right? So you'll be able to deposit, say your, whale-sized, amount of cryptocurrency, and then it'll be sitting in your off-chain account that is still controlled by your wallet. Now, say you want to transfer it to some other account holder at that same bank. Well, now you just say, okay, I just want to transfer. And it's just like Zelle, and it happens instantaneously, but it happens with cryptographic proof. And the HSMs, which is there's a pool of them, they process this autonomously. So it preserves the security model. So it's almost entirely the sort of level of strength you'd expect from like full-on decentralized blockchain, but it's instant transfers, right? Like instant cryptographic transfers, and they're private, right? And so that makes it, really attractive, right? And sure, you still have to trust the custodian to some degree, but the way we made it is it's extremely difficult. Basically, the only way to steal money from the inside is by setting it up wrong, right? So it's like we've eliminated sort of the PayPal problem for crypto, the instant transfer problem, the KYC problem, along with the insider theft and fraud problem, all in one system. So when people ask me, do you have competition? I just say no.
Interesting.
Right? Because it's, that was the condensed version and the private. So I hope that answers the competition question, right?
It does. Briefly, like you said, would love to listen to all of it in length someday. But you did mention that revenue looks good, and you guys are coming up with a few partnerships. That's a bit hush hush for now, but there are a few institutional clients that you guys have partnered with. In terms of revenue, however, we all know that we were in a bear market, so to say, rather. For the last 1.5 year, May last year, we've been in a bear market. How has it looked for you at MatterFi? Did it affect revenue? How were your quarterly reports? Were they painful? Were they not so painful? What was the site there?
I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. Absolutely, they were painful. Everybody wants the CEO to just be like, yeah, it was great. We crushed it. Market schmarket. The truth is, like, half our customers basically disappeared last summer. Like, they were there one day, and then the next day they were calling me like, we're completely broke. All our money was, tied up in, FTX, or it was tied up in one of the other sort of, meltdowns, and then they're just gone. Right. So pretty much half our revenue disappeared. And along with that, investment also disappeared. Right. And we're interesting because we're not a token play, right? So we're an equity software company with 9 patents and a bunch of IP and stuff, right? And we had to downsize, we had to work really hard to get the product out the door, but we did not fold. We actually delivered the product. The product turned out better than anybody expected. You can go to swissfortress.com right now and like download the latest, the 7th beta version, beta 7. We just released that 3 days ago, and try the send the name thing for yourself. So we got through it, but it was definitely really, it still is bad, right? It's still like we are still at the end of our bridge round, essentially, right? And we're about to go into Series A, and we're in due diligence with a really huge fintech company for that Series A. They also can't mention, obviously, but so we've had a lot of success because of the strength of the product and the fact that it's attractive to institutional customers. And the reason it's attractive to institutional customers, so there's like one reason I would say, we kind of had one killer feature that is getting us through the downturn. It's the KYC. Right. So we have this ability to have 100% cryptographic proof of identity, even for decentralized transactions. So that, and that in itself is actually a decentralized system. So I get excited about it, so I can kind of explain it to you. Would you like to hear how it works?
Absolutely. Yes, please go ahead.
Because this is the thing that saved us, right? It's like, so instead of playing in the crypto game, which is, really like, if you're a token project, you're really going to struggle fundraising right now. And us being equity, like, that's the feature that got us through, because the biggest thing the world wants right now is they don't want some big, centralized power in the sky controlling everything. Like, clearly people are very resistant to that. I mean, there's a few people that kind of want that scenario, but I think most consumers and most businesses certainly don't. But what they want to do is they want to be able to comply with the laws, right? They want to be able to comply with what it is that's happening in the world. And so you've got, these places where you really have to have really strong KYC. And there's certain jurisdictions that, are sort of more into it than others. At the same time, it exists everywhere, right? Like, if you're a bank, you want to know for sure that the guy that deposited money into your account is in fact the guy that you KYC'd, and there's no way to circumvent that, right? So that's what we've created. We've created a system where not only do you have proof of their identity, but you have proof of their funds. When they withdraw, it's going straight to their private key, and when they deposit, it's coming straight from their private key. And you can still chain analyze it, right? So you can still run your chain analysis on these funds and see if they're tainted. But now, if they're tainted, you know who did it. You know exactly who they came from. You've got their ID, essentially. But the way the credentialing system works is it's still decentralized, meaning that if I'm a Swiss Fortress user, right, and I just want to have my global name like Mehow, and the wallet will work fine that way. But now, say I want to interact with somebody that requires KYC, which will be basically any CeFi operator or exchange, period, right? Or government, for example. So they're all going to ask for your identity. So now, how do we solve that problem while keeping this decentralized? The way we solve it is users can voluntarily sign up for a cryptographic proof of their identity, meaning that they'll provide their KYC info, we'll run a KYC check, and then depending on which platform this is, like if it's a bank platform, like our software is being used for a bank, then it'll use their traditional, whatever KYC they're already using. We're not a KYC company. We're not doing the KYC checks. We're providing the software for our users, meaning the businesses operating our software, to be able to turn the KYC into a cryptographic proof. So then what happens is the user signs up and, say their KYC passes, and now you've got you've got some metadata around that, like their name, maybe their age, or, what have you. And that's also arbitrary. It can be just by design, and users can have multiple different identities. Now those credentials are returned to the user, and they can be deleted off the centralized system that generated the KYC, right? So they don't need to continue to exist to function. So now the user has their credentials, but it's a cryptographic proof that can be verified by any third party. So now I, as a user, can choose to provide to, say, Goldman Sachs, if I want to interact with them, this is my identity. And when I do that, now Goldman Sachs knows exactly who they're interacting with, even if it's a decentralized Bitcoin transaction, right? And now we're also, one of the things we're developing, and most of this stuff I'm talking about is patent pending or in process with patents. And then the last thing we have that's really cool is now we can have atomic swap with that full KYC. So, there was recently the hack at Atomic Wallet, which, as far as I know, is kind of like the biggest, atomic wallet in the world, and there's something like 100 million got stolen. Well, first of all, my comment on that is obviously they're not really atomic, like, because in a real atomic transaction, the funds on both sides, it's just Alice and Bob agreeing to something, right?
Yeah.
And then the funds get tied up by Alice and Bob. And now the only thing that can happen is either transaction doesn't complete and they both get their money back, or the transaction does complete and they both get the counterparty's money. What we've added to that is now Alice and Bob can know who each other are. So now you can actually have atomic swap between institutions and individuals, individuals and individuals, and institutions and institutions. So, and that is, I would say, like, been the feature that's, getting us through this process. I have to say that, it hasn't been even remotely easy. Like, it's funny because like 2 years ago, I had a really great story. I had this story, right? But I had no product to show. But fundraising only took us like a couple of weeks. I think, most of 90% of it was done in 2 weeks, and it was all done by a month, and we've been in this bridge round now for a year, and we've raised almost like $1 million, which is, great. And now that we have this institutional traction and if you're like an investor and I'm pitching you, I can show you who these people are, right? I just can't announce it publicly, but if you're under NDA, I can show you who we're dealing with. And now, just in the last month, the story really changed for us as a business, right? Because, we actually, the biggest thing people would ask me is, okay, where's the product? And do you have institutional adoption? And now I can say yes and yes. And with that institutional adoption, I also have a bunch of revenue coming, so that, the revenue is increasing, but it definitely dropped like a rock, for the first half of 2023. Right. So, that is the sort of complete answer to what I think of the market right now. And it sucks and I hate it. I wish it was 2021.
Who does?
but it's for a number of reasons, right? Like the world's, we definitely have things not going that great in the world as we did say 2 years ago almost, but you still got to work hard, but you definitely have to have the right tech and you have to have it finished and all that. So that's what got us through. And I love the fact that we can solve this problem. And as far as I know, we're the only people that can solve this problem. There's certainly been other identity projects out there, but they all relied on DeFi or some side chain. Like this just works with Bitcoin, just works, period. Does not need a side chain. And it works centralized and decentralized. So you can have for example, you can have an ecosystem where a user signs up and they get their name, they get their KYC, and now they can just deposit their crypto straight in the bank. And now that those funds are insured, because now it's in custody. So now they have insured crypto and they can pull it out, and no one has to worry about the funds essentially being stolen in any of the traditional ways. 90%, unless the private key gets stolen, then there is no,
then there's no coming back from that.
Unless the private key gets stolen, there is no way to break the system, basically, right? So that's what we've created. And then we have some other partnerships that I just really can't talk about that are like where even the keys have like incredibly strong brand name backup and protection, like household names, that everybody knows will be involved in the backup custody of people's keys. So even if you're like, been super afraid of like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose my seed, we're going to be offering MPC backup. So like with biometric, we're going to be offering really secure self backup, physical backup, like all these things will be available as options in our ecosystem. And, I'm really excited that, finally, we have real recognition from, mainstream fintech, right? Like 100-year-old company type stuff. Right. So that's very exciting for us. And I think that's the thing that's getting us through the time period. Right.
Absolutely. Big moves coming for MatterFi, I'm sure. What caught my attention was that you guys managed funding in almost 2 weeks, you said. And I think getting funding from the right kind of funders is something that most Web3 entrepreneurs struggle with. Your word of advice on this, how did you guys manage it? And what should Web3 entrepreneurs have in their baskets to sort of achieve a similar setup with investors or funders?
So your question is, how do you get funding, right? So the 2-week thing, that was 2021. Like in 2023, we got funding and it took a year basically, right? So the fact we got funding, I still consider a success. But it was, okay. So basically your question is, what's the secret to getting funding? I mean, I'm in the process of, at some point, I'm going to write a book on, the sort of.
I'd love to have a signed copy for myself as well.
The Entrepreneur's Guide to Survival in Darkness. But basically, I mean, I kind of got some ideas, and I haven't like formalized this as an outline or anything. So I'm just going to kind of like riff on it. And then, if I get too rabbit holey on you, just stop me. If I'm like just going down a tangent. But basically the first thing you have to have is a killer idea, right? So the idea that you have to have is something that no one else really has. And these are all sort of things that aren't true in an easy market, because in an easy market, you can have a crappy idea and get funding very quickly because it's just hype, right? Like one of the hilarious things I found is, in the VC space, consistently you have, piles of money poured at certain projects. I'm not going to name any names. that, just the underlying tech isn't very good, and hold on a second. I got to plug in the laptop here because I just got the power warning. We don't want to cut off. Give me a second. So, a lot of money's been gets poured down on stuff that's actually weak, right? But when things are hard, like, you can't be weak. Like, you can't just have a good marketing story. Like, everything has to be there. Like, so the idea has to be awesome. The product has to be awesome. The pitch has to be awesome. The concept has to exist. And you have to have traction, right? Like, all these things, and the team has to be strong. All these things have to be true. And obviously, as an entrepreneur, like, how do you do that if you're starting from zero, right? And it's like, you have a really good idea. Well, then just start with the idea, and patent that. I'm a big fan of patenting things. Like, I actually, half our code is open source, but the other half is patented because we kind of like to have a mix. I think there's advantages to both. But like in this environment, like, if you're just doing a pure open source project and it's not token, you're not getting any money for it at all. And if it's a token project, it's extremely difficult. It's kind of like a red flag, right? So the first thing is you have to have all these things figured out yourself, and it has to all be solid. So, the way I did it is I'm kind of like an information inhaler, right? So I know how to account. I know how to do spreadsheets. I know how to sell. I know how to engineer things. I know how to do, enough cryptography to be super dangerous. I know how to hack, and I know how to write code. I know people. It's like, you pretty much got to be like, Elon Musk Jr., right? To survive. And I'm not saying I'm anything new like that guy. That guy's like next level, but it's a, if you read his book, like, I just got through his biography, and it's like, the guy knows everything, right? Like, he knows how to do everything, basically. And if you're starting up, you have to be that guy because you can't afford to hire people that do that. And you have to create enough of the story right at the beginning so that you get like enough seed from your idea to go then make the, MPV, and then, keep going. But like right now, I mean, unless your idea is super incredible, and you got like incredible connections. I mean, maybe you have an exit and you already made somebody some money. Like, it isn't like, right now is literally the worst time in my life to be a, entrepreneur. And I started doing entrepreneurship almost like 19 years ago. Like, I'm 51. I started at 32. Right. So it's, right now it's brutal. Like, I don't recommend, it's like therapy as much as you need VC and a good idea, right? Like, so it's, my tip is right now is, if you don't need to do it, don't do it. Maybe, incubate something awesome and then start off when things are better. Because like right now, there are certainly plenty of projects that are incredible, that are, normally wouldn't really be struggling at all, that have revenue, and they're not getting a second look. Right. And, the feedback I get from VCs is none of the usual, hey, we don't like the tech, or, the team is weak, or you guys don't have enough traction, or like, I've got, the investors, when they talk to me, the investor excuse sheet doesn't exist, right? They can't give me any of the typical answers because they're just obviously bullshit, right? It's like, we're not impressed with your 700,000 lines of original code. It's just not a thing that I hear. But what I do hear is, we're just not funding because we just lost 90% of our stack. Like, I hear that all the time, right? And there's just a lot of people just shutting down, and with all the sort of geopolitical turmoil, and certainly what's going on in Israel, that hasn't helped. What's happened in Russia has not helped. The sort of, American inflation has not helped. The post-COVID stuff, none of this is helping, and the macros are now eating the micros. And you got to be a really exceptional micro, essentially, to get through it. And even then, like, I hope I survive. I'm still not out of the woods. Like, I hope that, it's like, it's not done, right? like, we still need amazing partners and people, like, I'd love if the people at our table that are fans and their investors and their clients were double what they were. And then I could kind of sleep at night. Like right now, the sleep is 50-50. So
Yeah.
that's
talking about, I think we ought to talk about regulations as well. That is one thing that takes away a lot of sleep off of entrepreneurs. And if I'm not wrong, you guys are working out of the United States in terms of how the SEC has acted with a lot of Web3 projects. Did you guys face any issues in terms of regulations when you were establishing the firm? It's been almost 4 years into business now. So how has it looked for you guys in terms of regulations? Did you face any problems? Will the market get any better for other entrepreneurs in this space?
So we're remarkably, I mean, our story is very unique. Obviously, regulators versus crypto, it's like, like this. So we have one client that I can't mention yet, but that project is basically using our tech to create a KYC standard for the entire EU, because the EU specifically is, I would say, more draconian even than the US jurisdictions about KYC. And ultimately, like, we've had an easy time with the regulators. We haven't had any issues at all because we're not a token project. We did not raise with a token. We did not release a token. We did not sell a token. We did a straight, completely by the book, Reg D and Reg S, in America, right? So we filed all the paperwork. Everything is like, it couldn't be, it's just a straight equity investment. Like, that's what we did. There's no, token kicker. There's none of that. So there's no red flags in our business at all that would, cause a regulator to have an issue. And we, as MatterFi, we just license the software, right? So we are a licensor of software, and we have an export license, that was blessed. We have all the letters and the export license, so that our cryptography is not considered a weapon. And the reason for that is simple. The algorithms we use in our stuff are not anything that doesn't exist. It's not like we came up with some new ZK thing or whatever to hide money. We are not a mixer. We do not create mixing technology. We are actually the opposite. We create incredibly strong KYC between two counterparties that's unbreakable from the outside, which literally everybody wants, right? So if you're a regulator right now, you're I was at the Point Zero forum presenting in Zurich, maybe what was it, like 4 months ago, and the EU and there was a lot of those type of Davos folks. I've been to Davos twice, gave talks there twice. There were, there's a lot of people that, are looking for how do you actually, create a regulatory environment that everybody can comply with? And the biggest problem has always been KYC, right? Like, people do not know how to identify users in the decentralized environment in a way that makes sense, right? And we believe that we're the only people that have created the answer so far. And it's certainly getting a lot of, resonance. And at some point it's going to get some, CBDC, like we're ideally implementing a sort of decentralized-ish CBDC, right? And I'm not, I obviously have personal political views, but in my opinion, I don't let them mess with the business, right? Like, I really want to just give the world the tools so that everybody can voluntarily decide, okay, we're going to do business in this jurisdiction. Here's the rules. We want to follow the rules. And that's what we've created. We've created tech that makes that possible, and it wasn't possible before, because people are still like, well, here in the EU regulators at the Point Zero conference, they're really like, we've given up on crypto. Like, basically that's the synopsis of their talk. Screw DeFi. We hate DeFi. We don't want to work with DeFi. Why? Because it's constantly being used as a mixer by terrorists. Yeah. And they're probably right. I mean, right? DeFi is just, okay, you've got inbox A, you got outbox B. You put things in A and you get different things out of B. And the DeFi is like, well, you put it here, so I'm going to give it back to you here. And that's it, right? That's DeFi. So of course it's going to get abused. I mean, it's begging to be abused. It's like, it pretty much says, mix with me now here, right? So what we did, we actually have a patent on this. We have a patent where the DeFi can understand the identity system I described, and it can be like, okay, you can't interact with me because you're not a legitimate user, right? So we've created this ecosystem where this KYC stuff can exist voluntarily. Again, the system itself is decentralized, so people volunteer. And if they don't like to do some KYC with somebody, they don't have to do business with that entity, right? So it's still their choice. It's not like we're saying, okay, there's this big thing where everybody's got to have KYC. No, you can still have your decentralized wallet, but if you want to buy money from, buy crypto from, say, a big centralized player, I just keep using the example Goldman Sachs. We don't have a business relationship with them. I just want to make that clear. But it's just an example of like a sort of a whale institution that's dabbled into the cryptocurrency space, and they'd love to offer more services, But the biggest problem they're facing, like everybody in the regulatory big fintech space, is how do we solve the KYC problem? So for us, it hasn't been an issue. Not saying it's never going to be, but the way we set it up, I hope it's smart, and I hope we don't run into issues. Our clients are like, we have 2 Swiss DAOs as clients. So Swiss Fortress is a AG in Switzerland. Casper is I believe an AG or a GmbH in Switzerland. And Space Dogs is a Wyoming DAO. Meanwhile, these other fintech clients, they're all as institutional as you can get, with all the licenses and all the money commission, everything, which is what you need to do that centralized sort of, Fedwire for crypto functionality I was talking about earlier. Like, so I'm not going to sit there as MatterFi, even though I have the software, I'm not going to set up hey, transfer tons of crypto here out of Wyoming, because I know that I'm breaking the law if I do that, right? So I'd much rather, and I'm not an expert in any of that stuff, and I'm not a banker. Like, I don't want to be a banker. I want to be a secure software developer, right? I want to make this sort of future where everything's decentralized and autonomous and super, super secure, and people can choose to follow the law. If there's certain organizations that have to mandate a certain process around the KYC, they can do that. And if people don't want to participate, fine, they don't have to do business with that person, but then they're not going to get, whatever that benefit is. And I found, obviously most of us still use a traditional bank, right? At least in the US, right? There's certainly plenty of places where there's a lot of unbanked, and we have clients upcoming in those areas as well. But I would say that whole space, the sort of, unbanked space, like they're really struggling with funding right now. Like we have a lot of projects in the pipeline that are raised, right? And if, I just had a giant pile of millions of dollars to help people, which I don't right now, because we're really busy just keeping ourselves going well. And I would be doing a lot of, unbanked functionality, because let me describe another sort of dream scenario for me that I got really excited about. So there's one project in Africa where the guys were like, okay, well, we've got one phone in the village. That phone has a bank. Right. So we were like, okay, well, what we can do is we can, they say there's 20 people in the village. We can give them all a card. And then the way our wallet actually works is when you tap the wallet, the hardware wallet to the card, it'll just load all your balances, let you do all your transfers. So now you can have a single phone actually be the bank terminal for an entire village. And because of the centralized and decentralized instant payments nature, everybody can pay each other on and off chain, and there's KYC and everything, right? So it's so we can have a single phone solve this huge problem. But as of today, I could build that system. I could have it running in 2 months, but there's no customer that's currently paid for that to actually roll out, right? And we can't economically, we can't do it for free. So it's, that part of it's been a challenge.
Absolutely. We're almost at the end of our episode, but before that, we're also heading towards the end of this year. Could you just describe how this year has been for you, and what are your top expectations from the space, from MatterFi? I know a lot of things are in works. You already mentioned that, and we will get the news of it really soon, I'm sure. We would be the first few to be publishing that as well, I hope. And but apart from that, what are your top expectations from MatterFi and the space at large in the next year?
Well, for us personally, our goal is to get through the last little bit of our bridge, get the Series A. That should all be done by January. I'm hoping. I'm hoping it gets done in the next week. But between now and January, it should actually complete. And then we're going to go into production, meaning that all our customers will have, be doing right now, all our production is on test nets. So our wallet support, all 1,200 ERC20 tokens, Ethereum, Casper, Bitcoin, et cetera, BCH. We have a lot of multi-currency support, but it's all test net, right? So you can play with it without hurting yourself. So we're going to be going into production, right? And then we're also going to be deploying this Fedwire for crypto system. We're going to be deploying the atomic swap. We're going to be deploying the worldwide KYC. And it's all interoperable, right? So one MatterFi customer, those users will easily be able to interact with another MatterFi customer. And we hope to create an ecosystem of these businesses that are basically using our infrastructure. And we want to become the main, the big goal is to become the main provider of custody solutions, because we think architecturally our custody system from a security point of view is just the best one, period. And we want to be the number one player in custody because of all these things that our custody system does that nobody else's does, which is like the instant payments and being able to load any type of business functionality into the custody system itself and have the HSMs themselves, run the entire business autonomously. So, and then we're also going to be releasing like a Trezor ledger sized wallet devices. So it's not just going to be the cards. Like these cards are cool. This is very secure technology, but obviously it doesn't have a screen, right? But some people want a screen. They want to see, okay, I'm sending to so-and-so. Now, right now in a Trezor or ledger, it says I'm sending to this address. So you have to really understand addresses to know that it's actually doing what you want. In our case, they'll say, I'm sending to Mehow, digitally signed, this is identity, et cetera, right? So if I, Mehow, shared my identity with my counterparty, right? So, and then, that atomic swap feature, like that's one of the things that I really want to see. That like really blows my mind because it'll create worldwide liquidity while creating worldwide compliance at the same time. So we'll have atomic swap without, people having to like run it in some jurisdiction where they're really trying to avoid the regulations because you'll be able to comply with all the regulations, right? So like travel rule, that stuff, like we can cryptographically comply with it and just let users, okay, if you want to use the system, here's the rules. If you don't want to use the system, here's the system light. So those are my goals for MatterFi, and then, as a company, I think, my goal as an entrepreneur is to, create something really valuable and then, get bought by somebody that's better than me at doing this, right? So SpaceX, Elon.
He's the man.
So,
but we'll be waiting for your book launch, hopefully.
And then and then I'll, once I do that, then I'll write the book on how I did it, which is like, the truth behind this stuff. Because a lot of people in the biz op space, like I don't want to be in the biz op space because I hate the biz op space because it's all like, you're going to learn these 3 methods and then in 2 seconds, you're going to be filthy rich, just like me. Check out my Ferrari. And, my interaction with those people personally, I've had a lot. I lived in LA for a long time. I was in entertainment myself. And I interacted with a lot of people like that. And with 100% certainty, it was all fake. Like the only reason these people were making any money was by selling their course for 10K, right? And then buying that car and leasing it or whatever, right? Like that was the reality. Because if you're really an entrepreneur and you really got the secrets, you're not going to, start a biz op course telling people about it because that doesn't make any sense, right? You're going to go make the money and then you're going to, maybe tell the story if you want, right? So I don't know. Your other question was like, what's my hope for crypto? I mean, I just really hope in 2024, the world just becomes better, right? Like the wars stop, the inflation stops, there's certainly places, I don't want to say names or, anything, but there's certainly places where the political leadership is really messed up right now. And, that's affecting all of us and it's affecting the sort of human collective. And I hope we get to do, real awesome stuff as a human collective, essentially, and create a lot of autonomy and opportunity for people. And just things get better overall because between COVID and then all the mistakes that happened with the lockdowns and the economy, now we're suffering through that. Like, I actually hope there's a few years where, people get a breather because, as a population, we need that. Right. And I hope to, kind of create the tech or keep creating the tech that we're making to help that shift. And I do hope to get to these, sort of more do good ESG-ish projects where, we're helping people in need because we have the bandwidth to do it. But it's like, it's interesting right now because we don't have the bandwidth to do it because of the sort of macro contraction, right? Like when you have this sort of bad macro contraction, like you can't do the extra good, right? Like the essence of sort of do good capitalism is that you're not getting messed up by these macro situations, and now you have the extra bandwidth to really help people, right? So you're not just trying to survive. And certainly for 2023, like, me personally and the business have been trying to survive. So I hope that all of us in 2024 get out of that.
Absolutely. Here's hoping that we see better days in 2024, not just for the Web3 space, but the world at large. And I wish you all the very best for all the amazing things that you're working on. And of course, your book. And I hope that you get a lot of rest and aren't worried by all of these things. It was a great chat. It did not feel like 50 minutes at all, and I would continue speaking at length. I would love to hear more about it, and would absolutely love to host another episode with you really soon, maybe after the Series A funding that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
So wait till there's some press. Kara will contact you with the press. She knows she can't say because it's
yeah,
under embargo, but there's like 3 big things we're doing that'll definitely all be out by January. And then I'll really, then we can have another interview where it's like, hopefully this one sounded like fortune telling, and then that one will sound like, okay, we're really cooking with gas, right? So yeah, I appreciate the energy, and thank you for the time. And
thank you so much, Mehow, for joining us today. And our viewers absolutely loved and enjoyed it. And I don't think, let me just quickly check if there are any questions. Nah, not as many questions as there are requests for a gift box or a giveaway. That will happen really soon. Money is the talk of the town for sure. But thank you so much for this really exciting session. A lot of what you said was super insightful, and here's hoping that we definitely see better days for the world at large. And those were some really beautiful thoughts that you presented there, Mehow. It was great chatting with you. Love the energy, and would love to have you back on my show really soon. Thanks again for joining Voice of Crypto today.
all right, thank you, Varuni. Great chatting with you as well.
Likewise. Thank you. This
Yep,
is
bye.
all for today.
All right, bye.